January 18, 2014, 3:47 a.m., North Phoenix, Arizona. A 911 call reports a ransacked house and a woman on the floor. 30 minutes earlier, cameras at Talking Stick Resort logged Hannah Cole leaving her shift. At 3:33 a.m., a garage keypad at her townhouse recorded a correct entry. At 3:40 a.m., a neighbor heard heavy thuds near the stairs. What happened to Hannah between the parking lot and her front door? 3 years later, new records and forgotten cameras will sharpen that window to minutes. They will isolate two paths that met before dawn. One detail will break the timeline open. Hannah Cole was 38, steady on long overnight shifts. She had moved from Utah to Scottsdale in 2001. By 2014, she worked as a cocktail server at Talking Stick. Her co-workers called her reliable. Schedules showed she favored back-to-back weekends for overtime. She lived alone in a 2-story townhouse near 19th Avenue. The place was quiet, close to Loop 101, with HOA gates and cameras at the entries. Her family lived nearby. Denise, her younger sister in Mesa, spoke to her most days. Emily, 22, studied in Tempe and visited on weekends. They knew Hannah liked routine. She parked in the same spot. She used the garage entry, not the front door. She texted when she left work, then again when she got home. That habit let people measure risk in minutes. The week before January 18th carried stress. Hannah had reported a strange break-in 3 weeks earlier. A small safe was pried open. An engagement ring was missing. Oddly, a pair of men's briefs had been left in the bedroom. A drawer of swimsuits was disturbed. Police documented the scene, but there were no arrests. Hannah changed codes and replaced a side door lock. She said she saw a man loitering near the complex dumpsters one evening. She could not identify him. On the evening of January 17th, the resort posted her on the late bar. She clocked out at 3:12 a.m. A camera saw her cross the employee lot at 3:18. She carried a small purse and a jacket. Her car exited toward Pima Road at 3:20. Cell records later put her phone moving west on the 101. Traffic was light. The drive to North Phoenix takes about 20 minutes at that hour. Her garage keypad would become central. Logs pulled days later showed a valid 4-digit code entered at 3:33 a.m. That code belonged to Hannah. The system registered a short open-close cycle. The interior motion sensor near the stairwell recorded movements seconds afterward. There were no alerts from the front door. The timer on the living room lamp clicked off at 3:45. At 3:40 a.m., a neighbor heard 3 dull strikes. Then silence. She did not call. The sounds matched other pre-dawn noises in the complex. Delivery trucks arrived early. Garbage pickups rattled bins. The neighbor mentioned it only after patrol cars filled the street. The 911 call came at 3:47 a.m. The caller identified himself as Mark Delaney, a Phoenix firefighter and Hannah's estranged husband. He said he arrived with Emily to pick up some of Emily's clothes. He said the garage stood open, which he called unusual. He moved his daughter outside and called for an officer. He did not check for a pulse. The dispatcher kept him on the line until patrol arrived. Responding officers entered at 3:53 a.m. They found the home in disarray. Drawers were dumped. A table was overturned. The focus point was the stair landing. They documented impact staining on the wall and on the runner. They noted broken fingernails and defensive marks on the victim's hands. Medics confirmed life was extinct. The scene commander logged the time at 3:57 a.m. A perimeter was set. The medical examiner was notified. Investigators began a fast track for video. They requested HOA gate footage for the previous 12 hours. They pulled external cameras from nearby gas stations. They knocked on doors for ring-style doorbells. Most units did not have them in 2014, but a rideshare driver did. His dashcam faced the street as he waited on a pickup. At 3:25 a.m., it captured a figure carrying a tool bag. The person crossed a dim stretch near Hannah's block and disappeared from frame. The video would be enhanced later. Inside, crime scene techs photographed a small plastic tag on the entry mat. It looked like it had stuck to a shoe and fallen off. The barcode was clean enough to scan. It returned a hit for a fiberglass-handled hammer sold at a nearby Lowe's. The team bagged it with gloves, logged it, and continued. In the garage, they lifted a partial print from the keypad smudge area. It was not usable. They dusted the doorknob. Most prints belonged to Hannah. By noon, detectives had a working window between 3:18 and 3:47 a.m. They mapped each point. Resort lot, 3:18. Garage code, 3:33. Stair landing motion, 3:33 to 3:34. Neighbors' thuds, about 3:40. 911 call, 3:47. Every minute mattered. They set 2 tracks. 1. Confirm or exclude Mark's route and timeline. 2. Identify the figure with the tool bag. The first 24 hours brought small items that moved cases. An HOA camera caught a silver pickup entering at 8:56 p.m. on January 17th and exiting at 9:14 p.m. The plate was unreadable. A pawn shop in Glendale logged a platinum ring on January 19th, time stamped 10:41 a.m. The ring description was close to Hannah's report. Detectives held the ticket and requested the surveillance. A name surfaced before nightfall. It did not come from a lab. It came from a man who slept in a tent near the Salt River. He said a friend with a street name liked to brag about work done with a hammer. That was the first time they heard the word ghost. Someone else knew that word already. Detectives pushed hard in the first 48 hours. On January 18, 2014, they canvassed the townhouse block and pulled every available camera. The HOA gate recorder showed a silver pickup entering at 8:56 p.m. on January 17th, then exiting at 9:14 p.m. The plate was unclear. A nearby gas station provided exterior footage from after midnight. A rideshare driver waiting on a fare turned over dashcam video from 3:25 a.m. It showed a person crossing the street with a tool bag and moving toward Hannah's row. The figure kept the head down and wore a dark jacket. Enhancement would come later. The time stamps were enough for a working path. Inside the townhouse, crime scene techs logged a barcode tag on the entry mat. The scan matched a fiberglass-handled hammer sold at a Lowe's on Cave Creek Road. A rush request went to that store. Managers secured receipts from the days before January 18th and isolated the exact SKU. They found a cash sale on January 17th, time stamped 9:11 p.m. The sale included the hammer, a pair of rubberized gloves, and a roll of duct tape. The camera above aisle 7 captured 2 men. One carried the hammer and gloves. The other watched the aisle, then pointed toward checkout. By noon, detectives had the receipt, the clip, and the tag from the floor. They requested ALPR hits around the Lowe's between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. A city camera 2 blocks south flagged a silver pickup consistent with Mark Delaney's model. The image did not capture the full plate. It captured a missing rear passenger hubcap that matched a known dent on Mark's truck. The detail was noted, not announced. At 3 p.m., a call reached the tip line. The caller identified himself only as Big Nate. He camped near the Salt River and knew a man everyone called Ghost. Ghost, he said, claimed he got work that paid cash. He bragged he was told to bring a hammer with a plastic handle because the wood wouldn't snap. He laughed about it. The tone set off alarms more than the words. Patrol units drove the riverbank with the caller and located a small tent cluster under a stand of trees. One man fled. Another pretended to sleep. In brush near the tents, officers found a pair of dark work pants with pale specks. Next to them lay a crumpled price tag from a hammer SKU sold at Lowe's. A plastic grocery sack held a black knit mask. Everything was bagged and logged. The phones mattered. A prepaid handset recovered near one tent had only 5 contacts. One entry read, Mark, fire. The number matched Mark Delaney. Detectives secured call detail records for January. The dump showed 87 connections between that prepaid number and Mark's phone during the month. 5 calls occurred between 8:45 p.m. and 11:58 p.m. on January 17th. The pattern was unusual for casual, odd jobs. It suggested planning, or at least close coordination, in the hours before the crime. Detectives interviewed Hannah's co-workers again. She had worked a clean shift. She left at 3:12 a.m. She waved at a security camera, as she always did. No disputes were reported. A bartender remembered a man in a station polo shirt asking if Hannah still lived off 19th Avenue. Security could not confirm the man's identity from the angle. The timestamp placed the question around 1:40 a.m. They also reran the earlier break-in. 3 weeks before, an engagement ring vanished from a Pride safe. A drawer of swimsuits had been disturbed. Men's briefs were left on a chair in the bedroom. The staging looked deliberate. Hannah changed codes and upgraded a side door. She also texted her sister about a man hanging near the dumpsters. She had not recognized him. That report now carried weight next to the tool bag clip. On January 19th at 10:41 a.m., a Glendale pawn shop logged a platinum ring that fit Hannah's description. Detectives reached the store fast. They placed a hold and pulled the counter video. The clip showed a thin man with a hood and gloves sliding the ring in a tray. He never looked at the lens. He left with cash and a small paper envelope. The ticket fingerprint was smudged. The purchase date was within hours of the crime. That afternoon, the rideshare dashcam footage went to the lab. Analysts stabilized the frame and tuned the shadows. The figure's gait had a slight hitch on the right side. Detectives thought of one person. Trevor "Ghost" Miller had a limp from an old ankle fracture. His nickname was not secret in the tent camps. His circle knew it. Mark Delaney knew it too. Several neighbors had seen Mark talk with a man who limped while walking a dog near the complex weeks earlier. The description fit. Quick housekeeping kept the case moving. Detectives verified Mark's shift log. Phoenix Fire confirmed a long tour ending the afternoon before the homicide. Body-worn device battery logs and keycard entries matched the schedule. It did not rule him out. It only set times. They also requested tower dumps for the block around Hannah's townhouse, the Lowe's, and the Salt River. The goal was simple. Map both phones. See where they overlapped. The overlap, if it existed, would not lie. If you follow cases built from cameras, logs, and small missed items, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next chapter. It helps this kind of work reach more people. As night fell on January 19th, the detectives had a name, a store, a tag, and a phone linking Ghost to Mark Fire. They also had a pattern that matched the break-in 3 weeks earlier. The question was whether the man with the limp would talk, and if he did, whose name he would say first. On January 20th, 2014, detectives returned to the Salt River camp with arrest paperwork. They found Trevor "Ghost" Miller near a fire ring, wearing the same dark jacket seen on the dashcam. He did not resist. At Phoenix Police Headquarters, they logged his property, photographed his right ankle scar, and collected the prepaid phone. An interview began at 10:12 a.m., recorded on video. He asked for water and a cigarette. He waived counsel. The first questions focused on the ring sold in Glendale at 10:41 a.m. on January 19th. Ghost denied knowing Hannah Cole. He said he found the ring in a parking lot. Detectives slid the pawn clip across the table. They paused it on his hands. He wore the same jacket, the same knit cap. He watched without comment. They placed the Lowe's receipt beside it. They showed the aisle camera from 9:11 p.m. on January 17th. 2 men stood under the sign for aisle 7. One picked up a fiberglass-handled hammer and gloves. The other scanned the aisle, then pointed toward checkout. Ghost exhaled and asked for another bottle of water. At 11:03 a.m., he said he was offered $700 in cash. He said more money would come after insurance paid out. He said the offer came from Mark Delaney. He called him Mark Fire because that is how his name's saved in the phone. He said Mark had given him a copied key. He said Mark told him to wear black and wait inside. He said Mark talked him through a practice run 3 weeks earlier to see how the locks worked. He said Mark told him to buy a fiberglass hammer because wooden ones can snap. Detectives asked about entry and the stairwell. Ghost said he let himself in from the garage before 3:30 a.m. He said he waited in a hall closet and then moved to the living room. He said he heard the garage close and footsteps on the stairs. He said he stepped out and struck from behind. He said the hammer broke. He said he continued with the metal head until there was no movement. He said he left through the garage. He said he took a piece of jewelry and threw clothing into a trash bin on the way out. The description matched the disarray without graphic detail. The time frame fit the neighbor's report of thuds around 3:40 a.m. They pressed him on the calls and the ride. He said Mark drove him to Lowe's in a silver pickup and paid cash. He said Mark told him which code to enter. He said Mark called him 5 times the night of January 17th to confirm timing. He said Mark promised a bigger payment after everything cleared. Detectives stepped out and checked the tower dump. The prepaid phone and Mark's phone hit the same cell sectors near the Lowe's between 8:54 and 9:20 p.m. The phones also co-located near the Salt River 2 hours later. The overlap was not absolute proof, but it supported the sequence. They confronted him with the tag found on Hannah's entry mat. He looked down and asked if it had prints. It did not. He asked what would happen if he took them to the hammer. They told him that was a step, not a deal. He agreed to show the dump site. At 1:42 p.m., a convoy drove to a clearing off a dirt service road south of the river. He pointed to a shallow scrape behind a mesquite. Crime scene techs sifted the soil and produced a fiberglass hammerhead with trace staining and desert grit. They photographed it in place, bagged it, and logged GPS coordinates. Back at the lab, tool marks would later match microscopic fractures on small chips taken from the stair landing. The next interview focused on motive. Ghost said Mark complained about money and the divorce. He said Mark spoke about custody issues in angry terms. He said Mark wanted control of his schedule and his home. He said Mark asked if Ghost would make it stop. He said he did not believe him at first. He said he raised the price to $5,000. He said Mark laughed and said the real money would come later. The statement tracked with the pawn and the insurance angle, which detectives had already flagged from paperwork found in Mark's desk during a consent search. They checked Mark's shift log again. Phoenix Fire confirmed his previous 24-hour tour ended on January 17th. They confirmed he was off-duty early on January 18th. They produced body-worn device battery logs consistent with that schedule. Detectives mapped his known movements against the ELPR hits. A silver pickup with a missing rear passenger hubcap appeared 2 blocks from the Lowe's at 8:58 p.m. It reappeared near Hannah's HOA gate at 9:12 p.m., leaving at 9:14 p.m. The sequence aligned with the aisle camera and the cash receipt. On January 22nd, word reached Mark's family that he was now a focus. That evening, at about 9:30 p.m., Mark drove east on Loop 202 and accelerated into a concrete barrier. Investigators noted the lack of skid marks. He survived with injuries and was transported to a Phoenix hospital. On January 24th, detectives served an arrest warrant at his bedside and informed him of the charges. He asked to call his attorney. He did not make a statement. The prosecutor's office filed counts for first-degree murder and conspiracy. Ghost faced his own set of charges. His lawyer opened talks on a plea if he testified truthfully. Detectives now had a statement, a hammerhead, a pawn ticket, a store video, and a phone link. A jury would decide if those pieces formed a single plan or a string of coincidences from a bad night. One person had not spoken yet, and she knew Mark's habits as well as Hannah did. Jury selection finished in late August 2017 at the Maricopa County Superior Court in Phoenix. Opening statements were brief. Prosecutors said the case turned on minutes, cameras, and phones. The defense said Trevor "Ghost" Miller was a liar who wanted a deal. They agreed on one fact. Hannah Cole died inside her North Phoenix townhouse on January 18, 2014, before dawn. The state called the Lowe's asset protection manager first. He authenticated the aisle 7 clip from January 17th at 9:11 p.m. 2 men appeared under the overhead sign. One lifted a fiberglass-handled hammer and rubberized gloves. The other glanced up the aisle and gestured toward checkout. The receipt tied the sale to that time. The SKU matched the barcode tag recovered from Hannah's entry mat. A city video specialist walked the jury through nearby automated license plate readers. A silver pickup consistent with Mark Delaney's model appeared 2 blocks south of the store at 8:58 p.m. The rear passenger hubcap was missing. Photos of Mark's truck showed the same wool detail. The plate was incomplete, but the pattern and timing lined up with the store clip and receipt. A forensic analyst from the police lab described the hammerhead recovery. Ghost led detectives to a shallow scrape off a service road near the Salt River on January 20th. The head bore desert grit and microfractures. Tiny chips taken from the stair landing paint shared matching tool marks under comparison. No blood description was offered. The testimony stayed technical and clear. Prosecutors then used records to tighten the clock. The HOA gate camera recorded a silver pickup entering Hannah's complex at 9:12 p.m. and leaving at 9:14 p.m. on January 17th. The garage keypad log showed a valid 4-digit code at 3:33 a.m. on January 18th. The interior stair motion sensor triggered seconds later. The living room timer switched a lamp off at 3:45 a.m. The 911 call from Mark reached dispatch at 3:47 a.m. The neighbor's statement placed 3 dull thuds near 3:40 a.m. An RF engineer explained the tower dump data. He mapped handset connections for the prepaid phones seized at the camp and for Mark's personal phone. Both devices used the same sectors around the lows between 8:54 and 9:20 p.m. They later appeared near the Salt River around midnight. The next co-location was near North Phoenix before 3:30 a.m. The experts stressed the limits of sector data. It cannot place a phone on a chair. It can place it inside a defined coverage shape. The Glendale pawnbroker testified about January 19th at 10:41 a.m. A thin man wearing gloves slid a platinum ring across the counter. He received cash and left with a small envelope. The surveillance clip was played. The ring style matched Hannah's earlier loss report from the prior break-in. The broker followed the paperwork rules. Police placed a hold that same day. Denise Cole took the stand next. She confirmed Hannah's routines, including text check-ins after work. She described the prior break-in and the men's briefs left behind. She said Hannah changed entry codes and replaced a side lock. She said Hannah told her about a man near the dumpsters days later. She could not identify him. The testimony was short and measured. Emily, 22, testified briefly. She explained why she and Mark went to the townhouse. She said she stayed outside when they saw the open garage. She said she did not enter the home. She confirmed she called out for her mother and received no answer. She did not watch the dashcam video and said she had never met Trevor Miller. The defense cross-examined the RF engineer for nearly an hour. They suggested sector overlap could be coincidence on a busy Friday night. They said the phone link was suggestive, not certain. They also challenged the aisle 7 clip. Buying a hammer and gloves, they argued, is legal and common. They noted the barcode tag lacked usable prints. They said the missing hubcap proved only a dent, not a driver. Ghost testified under his plea agreement. He described the copied key, the night calls, and the plan to wait inside. He said Mark promised a larger payment after things cleared. He admitted pawning the ring. On cross, the defense pressed his past drug use and hallucinations. They asked whether he tailored his story to fit the state's exhibits. He repeated the timeline and the hardware details, including the instruction to choose fiberglass over wood. The state recalled a Phoenix fire supervisor. He walked through Mark's shift records. The 24-hour tour ended on January 17th. Body-worn device battery logs matched door entries at the station. He confirmed Mark was off-duty early on January 18th. He could not say where Mark went after the shift ended. That gap was for the jury to fill with the phone data and cameras. In closing, prosecutors tied the minutes together. 9:11 p.m., aisle 7. 9:12 to 9:14 p.m., the HOA gate. 3:33 a.m., the garage keypad. 3:40 a.m., the thuds. 3:47 a.m., the 911 call. They argued the path was linear and planned. The defense said it was a web of assumptions built on a desperate witness. They asked the jury to isolate each item and find it insufficient alone. The jurors began deliberations with a stack of exhibits and a narrow window to judge. One piece still demanded an answer. Who else knew Hannah's garage code at 3:33 a.m.? The verdict arrived on August 24, 2017, at the Maricopa County Superior Court. The jury foreperson stood and read each count. They found Mark Delaney guilty of first-degree murder. They found him guilty of conspiracy. They found him guilty of burglary and related charges. He did not react. The clerk polled the jurors. Each confirmed the result. Sentencing followed on a separate date. The judge reviewed the timeline and exhibits. The aisle 7 video. The HOA gate records. The garage keypad log at 3:33 a.m. The tower dump collocations. The pawn ticket times stamped 10:41 a.m. The recovered hammerhead south of the Salt River. The judge described a planned sequence and a deliberate act. The court imposed life in prison without the possibility of parole. Additional terms for conspiracy, burglary, and related counts added decades. The sentences were ordered to run consecutive to life. Mark was returned to the jail to await transfer. Trevor "Ghost" Miller faced his own judgment weeks earlier. He accepted a plea that removed the death penalty. He agreed to testify truthfully at Mark's trial. The court sentenced him to 42 years to life. His earliest release would fall far in the future. He would likely die in state custody. The agreement required continued cooperation. Any lies could void the deal. After the verdict, the prosecutor's office held a short briefing. They thanked the jury for careful work. They credited dozens of small items collected early. The barcode tag on the entry mat. The rideshare dashcam at 3:25 a.m. The gate camera that caught the pickup at 9:12 p.m. The pawn ticket that appeared within 24 hours. The prosecutor said the case moved because those minutes were preserved. Denise stood with the team. She thanked the detectives and the lab staff. She said the family would take Hannah home to Utah. The plan was to place her near their father. Emily did not speak. She stood with an advocate and left by a side door. The office asked the public to respect their privacy. Within months, the defense prepared an appeal. They argued the court admitted prejudicial evidence. They attacked the tower dump testimony as too broad. They challenged the aisle 7 footage as inconclusive. They raised Mark's mental state. They pointed to medications and prior injuries. They suggested he was not competent during parts of the process. The state responded with the record. They pointed to the diaries of calls. They pointed to the ALPR pattern around the lows. They pointed to the collocation plots near the Salt River and North Phoenix. The appellate court affirmed the convictions. They found the evidence legally sufficient. They found no abuse of discretion in the rulings. Mark then filed a post-conviction petition. He claimed ineffective assistance by counsel. He said his lawyer failed to fully investigate mental health. He said experts were not called. The court reviewed the filings. It found no basis for relief. It noted the detailed cross-examinations during trial. It noted the defense challenges to each technical exhibit. The petition was denied. Mark remained in state prison. Outside the courtroom, the case continued in a different form. A small nonprofit registered in Phoenix. It worked on domestic violence awareness and safety planning. It used anonymous hotline referrals. It gave out simple checklists for high-risk separations. Change codes on every entry. Use two-factor authentication for smart locks. Vary routines and parking spots. Save receipts and camera clips. Report suspicious loitering immediately. The group trained apartment managers on evidence preservation. Hold overwritten footage. Secure keypad logs. Honor rapid police requests within lawful limits. Phoenix police added a short internal memo. It encouraged rapid canvassing for non-obvious cameras. Ride-hail dashcams, storefront domes, HOA gates, and curbside lots. Those angles built the map in the first day. The memo also recommended early ALPR polls. Many drivers passed the same corners before and after key events. The pattern built confidence in weak links. Emily completed her degree at Arizona State University. She moved to a different part of the valley. She kept her phone number but changed most routines. She used a post office box for public mail. She met with a victim services counselor. She visited Utah several times a year. She did not speak in public about the case. She cooperated with the nonprofit behind the scenes. Her work focused on organizing transportation for clients in danger. Denise returned to Mesa and resumed her job. She also managed family matters tied to the estate. She pushed to close out accounts and protect Hannah's digital history. She kept a copy of the case file index. She said it reminded her that details can save lives. She visited the townhouse once when it changed ownership. She did not step inside. She drove past and kept going. The court record closed with a short notation. Life without parole. Consecutive terms. Restitution ordered. Rights of appeal exhausted. The hammerhead remained in evidence storage under a sealed bag with desert grit. It sat on a shelf with the barcode tag and the pawn ticket copy. The case file waited for archive. One loose thread remained, and it sat in a folder labeled Insurance. The file labeled Insurance did not change the verdict. It explained the plan. During a consent search on January 24, 2014, detectives found policy statements in Mark Delaney's desk. The binder showed a recent premium increase and a beneficiary review dated December 28, 2013. A handwritten note referenced contact adjuster after weekend. A second note listed two dates, January 18th and January 20th. The claim was never filed. The homicide investigation froze the policy within days. Years passed. The conviction was affirmed in 2018. The evidence stayed consistent. In 2019, Phoenix police used the case for training. They broke the timeline into 6 anchor points and matched each to a source. 9:11 p.m., aisle 7 camera. 9:12 to 9:14 p.m., HOA gate. 3:33 a.m., garage keypad. 3:40 a.m., neighbor's thuds. 3:47 a.m., the 911 call. 10:41 a.m. the next day, the pawn ticket. Instructors stressed speed. Canvas for non-obvious cameras. Preserve digital logs before they roll over. The insurance folder added one small footnote in that training. Investigators found an email draft to an agent from January 16th. It asked about payout timelines during separation. It attached a scanned form with incomplete fields. It was not sent. Prosecutors did not treat the draft as a separate charge. They used it to explain motive in post-trial briefings to victim services groups. The point was simple. Money and control often track together in domestic cases. The RF engineer's maps became a slide on sector limits. He showed how the phones overlapped heavily near the Lowe's and near the Salt River. He also showed gaps. Phones can be off. They can be left behind. That is why the aisle clip and the barcode mattered. The training urged officers to value small items that resist excuse. A retail tag stuck to a shoe. A timer clicking off a lamp. A limp on a dashcam. The lesson was not new. It was specific. Denise spoke at a closed session that year. She avoided language about emotions and focused on steps. She told apartment managers to lock down DVRs fast. She told desk clerks to keep receipts. She told security guards not to overwrite gate logs until police reviewed them. She asked them to talk to people who wait in cars. The rideshare driver's dashcam was a turning point. He was not a resident. He was a witness because he stayed still long enough to record. Emily did not attend. She met quietly with advocates and helped write a checklist. It was published by a small Phoenix nonprofit in late 2019. It focused on high-risk separations. Change entry codes and garage remotes. Do not share routines. Use two-factor authentication on smart locks. Save text threads related to threats or unusual questions about addresses. Photograph strange items left behind. Call the non-emergency line for repeat loitering. The checklist moved through condo boards in Scottsdale and North Phoenix. A brief internal audit in 2020 reviewed seized devices from several cases, including this one. Technicians flagged a file on Mark's home computer. It was an image of a federal firearms transaction record started but never completed. The date field matched January 10, 2014. The file contained no serial number and no dealer information. It was a saved blank. Prosecutors had already suggested a plan to silence Ghost. The incomplete form supported an interest in new weapons within days of the crime. It did not lead to new charges. It strengthened what the jury had heard. By 2021, Hannah's townhouse had new owners. The HOA installed updated gate cameras with plate recognition and better lighting. A memo reminded residents to report any access code sharing. The board also adopted a preservation policy. Any request from police held the footage for a minimum of 30 days. The policy included garage keypad logs if the system allowed exports. The point was to codify what worked before. The medical examiner's records stayed sealed from public display. They were not necessary to understand this case. The state used technical markers to avoid graphic content. The stair landing chips, the match tool marks, the timing inside a 13-minute gap. The case earned its place in training because it showed a path that any jurisdiction could follow. It did not require rare technology. It required quick coordination and simple discipline. Mark Delaney remains in state prison on life without parole. His post-conviction petitions failed. Trevor "Ghost" Miller serves 42 years to life. He is still listed as a cooperating witness if needed for future hearings. Denise lives in Mesa and continues outreach with the nonprofit. Emily keeps her address private. She works behind the scenes on transport for clients in danger and insists on anonymity in all publications. When you step back, the outcome hinges on minutes that survive the night. The aisle camera that never blinked. The gate recorder that saw a missing hubcap. The lamp that switched off by timer. The tag that stuck to a shoe and fell on a mat. Each item was small. Together, they closed the gap between 3:33 and 3:47 a.m.